Senator, nice to talk to you again, sir.
Great to be with you. Thanks, Greta.
Senator, what are we going to do about the shutdown? We need DHS, we need TSA, we need a lot of things.
We sure do, and the Democrats have made it virtually impossible to fund all of the government because they have adopted the open borders, defund law enforcement position for which they have been known in the past, but which I thought they had gotten over. But they clearly, Greta, have made a conscious decision that they want to play politics, and I think this is about their political base. That's what they're demanding, and as a consequence, we're having to come up with a different way of funding ICE and CBP into the future. They are funded today. Thankfully, we had the foresight last summer to know that this was probably going to be a problem, and so we pre-funded DHS or at least CBP and ICE within DHS. But now we're going to have to do that into the future as well, because I don't think the Democrats are ever going to come off of this position of open borders and defund law enforcement. That seems to be where they're comfortable, and I think it's a loser with the American people, but we'll find out.
Do you speak to Senator Schumer often? I mean, what kind of relationship do you have with him?
We talk on occasion. Obviously, he, I think, right now is in a position where his political base is very demanding of him. The left-wing, progressive wing of the Democrat Party is where the energy is, where all the campaign resources are, where all the volunteers are these days, and so he has to cater to that, which makes it harder for him to come to the middle. But there are occasions, obviously, when we sit down and talk and figure out, if we can, a path forward. But in many cases, I think because of the demands he feels from his political base, he's not in a position to do things that, frankly, in my view, are in the best interest of the institution of the Senate and the country, like funding the government, like funding ICE and CBP, protecting the border, homeland security, national security. Those are things that every American ought to be for, no matter your political party. But these days, the Democrat Party in this country has moved so far left, and I think, for better or worse, Chuck Schumer is representative of that.
The issue, though, about voter ID is so popular for so many people, about 70 or 80% of the population, and yet he's not in favor of that. So how does that reconcile if he's making political moves to satisfy his base, and that he's ignoring an issue that's actually quite popular across the board?
And I think he and all Democrats need to be held accountable for that vote, Greta. If you think about that, and we gave him a vote, a simple vote, because the Save America Act includes other pieces. There are 5 different components to it, but we gave them a rifle shot vote. Are you for or are you against voter ID? A simple requirement that you have to show some kind of a government ID, a photo, when you go to vote. And the Democrats, with every exception, I think maybe, I can't remember, John Fetterman actually voted with us on that, but almost every Democrat voted no on that issue, even though many of them have been out there saying publicly that we are for voter ID. And we have voter ID in our state, and it works. And Chuck Schumer has in that camp. He said those things in the past, and yet when push came to shove and they had an opportunity to put their money where their mouth was, they all voted no on the narrow, simple issue of whether or not you ought to have to show an ID when you go vote on Election Day. That was all we were, we narrowed it down so that they couldn't say all these other issues were impacting their vote. This was a very narrow, confined issue, and they all voted no.
All right, today is tax day. I know that tax legislation doesn't begin in the Senate, but you used to be in the House years ago. The code is just so out of control. Nobody understands it at all. I bet 95% of the U.S. Senate hires somebody else to do his taxes. I mean, it really is sort of a failing by Congress for generations not to make this easy. Will we ever see tax reform?
Well, what we did last summer, it had elements of tax reform in it. It obviously had lowering of taxes on working families in this country, and pro-growth policies that will create greater growth in our economy, to create better paying jobs and higher wages for people in this country. So, obviously, pocketbook issues, economic issues are front and center for us and for President Trump. And we want to continue to put our country in the best position possible when it comes to a brighter, more prosperous future, where you've got faster growth in the economy and those good paying jobs being created out there. I do think, however, as you point out, that the tax code could be significantly simpler than it is today. And everybody farms out their tax preparation. Not everybody, but a lot of people do, because it has gotten so complicated. And the next thing that we do next time we go in and do anything with respect to the tax code, it ought to be with an eye toward reforming it to make it simpler and easier for people to do their own returns in the future.
I forgot who it was in past history, but would give all his economic his tax information to two preparers and got two completely different answers. And when you hear something like that, look, none of us wants to go to jail. None of us wants to pay late fees. None of us wants to pay interest because the IRS decides that we owe more when we, in good faith, filled out these forms the best we thought we could, or our preparers did. But it's incredibly high risk for everybody.
Well, it is, and I'm not disputing that at all, and I think there are things that we could do and should be doing to make it simpler. I mean, I think broadening the base, lowering rates, reducing the number of rates. And, there are lots of things that I think ought to be on the table when it comes to simplification. But I will tell you this: thanks to what we did last summer, people who are filing their tax returns, and today is tax day, are paying a lot less. 24% less than during the Biden administration. And if you're somebody who gets income from tips and overtime, or somebody who is a senior citizen who is eligible for the reduced taxation on seniors in this country and Social Security, you are seeing a 50% reduction in your tax liability, or 50%, I should say, bigger tax refund this year than you have in past years. No tax on tips, no tax on overtime, and no tax on, I should say, lower taxes on seniors on Social Security, are all things that are benefiting literally millions of people across this country and putting more money in their pockets and not forcing them to send more to Washington, D.C. So, yes, can it be simplified more? Absolutely. But are we lowering taxes on working families? In things that we did, 34 million families that take the child tax credit. There are 100 million Americans who claim the standard deduction, both of which have been doubled and now made permanent and actually increased above even what we did back in 2017 with that tax reform. So there is it's a new, I think, day in America in terms of working families and the opportunities they have available to them because of the more money they have in their pockets as a result of what we did last summer.
And I should emphasize again that this all has to begin in the House, not the Senate. And you're a gentleman not to say, don't blame me, blame the House. They haven't done it. That's where it starts, not with you.
I try not to do that, but yeah.
I know. I said you're a gentleman. You didn't say, don't ask me. Go talk to the House. Anyway, thank you, sir. Nice to see you, and happy Tax Day.